Welcome to the institutional seminar. And today we're going to have the French connection with Luc Lenain and Natalie Zilberman. So Luc is an associate researcher and a research and development engineer specializing in air-sea interaction. And he holds degrees from UPMC Polytech in Paris and the University of Delaware and École Normale Supérieure in Saclay. And he joined Scripps as a development engineer in 2005 and started working on his PhD here and received his PhD from Scripps while working full-time as an R&D engineer. And his work is focused on characterizing the influence of breaking waves, and 2D wave interaction, and looking at applications for topics like the generation of marine aerosols and upper ocean momentum fluxes. And he does this through a wide range of innovative sensing and measurements, experimental work in using the glass channel in the H-Lab, and modeling. And today he is going to talk to us about multi-scale observations of air-sea interaction. So Luc, over to you.
Great, well, thank you, Margaret. Let's see if I can share my screen here. All right, can you guys see my screen?
Looks good.
All right, thank you. All right, so thanks, Margaret. I'm really delighted to be here and to have the opportunity to introduce or reintroduce myself rather to the Scripps community. I mean, I've been here, as you mentioned, for close to 16 years now. Initially working under the direction of Ken. So I first would like to obviously acknowledge the contribution from Ken Melville, who has been instrumental in shaping my approach to science research and observational research in particular, and also the contribution of the team at the Air-Sea Interaction Laboratory, which really makes things happen. This is obviously a teamwork, what I'll be talking about. So I'll be focusing on this approach, this multi-scale approach to Earth interaction in this presentation today. This is going to be pretty high level, kind of giving you an overview of the breadth of the activity of my group. But I encourage you to contact me if you have any specific questions. So as a brief outline, I'll try to give you some motivation and introduction on why I get so excited about studying those processes, air-sea interaction and upper ocean processes. I'll talk about some of the work and some of the recent progress that we've made in the understanding of the coupling between the ocean and the atmosphere through various combined observational, theoretical, and modeling approach. I'll talk about technology innovation, because this is really important if you really want to better understand those kind of processes. You need to develop new technologies that really transform your ability to answer those science questions. And I also mention very briefly some collaborative research program, interdisciplinary collaborative research program, which I think are crucial if you want to maintain, the kind of level of expertise that is required to do this kind of work. And I think it's also a focus that our group is really taking right now, moving forward. All right, so as Margaret mentioned, I'm the current director of the Air-Sea Interaction Laboratory. This is a website here. There's quite a bit of information there if you're interested. In a nutshell, what the group is trying to do is to develop better understanding of the coupling between the ocean and the atmosphere using a combination of laboratory, in situ, remote sensing observational approach combined with theory and numerical modeling. you know, in other words, what we do is we come up with a science question and we try to tackle it from every angle possible using as many tools as we can, which can be very demanding, but it's also very very satisfying, because you really, you know, you can really try to focus on all aspects of a given problem. The kind of things that I'm specifically interested in is air-sea interaction and operation on process. And these are some of, you know, this is a conceptual schematic that shows some of those processes that that I'm particularly interested in. You know, this is an example here, you know, of a front, you know, what we call sub-mesoscale front, where you have wave current interaction occurring, and you see a frontal jet and wave breaking enhancement. You're going to have turbulence and mixing. You're going to get vertical transport, which is really important for biological activities. You're going to have air-sea ice interaction, as Margaret mentioned, you know, sea spray aerosol generated through braking, wave breaking induced transport. So a lot of things happening. But ultimately, you know, if you really want to, you know, what we're really after, I guess, is trying to develop better understanding of those processes, you know, better physical understanding, so we can parameterize those processes into global scale weather and climate modeling. This is obviously very important, as those models get to higher resolution, and they're only as good as the physics that you put in there. The big challenge, I think, that transpire from those plots that shows all those different phenomena is a broad range of scales that you have to deal with, from, you know, sub-millimeter scale, micron scale with aerosol, for example, all the way to some mesoscale, which will be in the order of, or mesoscale, to 10 to 100 kilometers. So the way we tackle this is by combining all those different tools that I alluded to earlier, and try to cover this, you know, try to implement this multi-scale approach to observing, especially, and understanding ocean-atmosphere interaction. So we use, you know, this is, you know, all the tools on the right, and, you know, this is a range of scale from sub-millimeters to 100 kilometer scale, and we use theory, modeling, and observational approach, which is both in situ and airborne, so that we can get spatial measurement, and in situ give us a lot of, obviously, in situ measurement underwater, as well as temporal information, and laboratory study, so we can test some of our hypotheses in a control environment. So how does it translate here? So for very small scale, we do a lot of work in the glass channel, and hopefully with SOURCE that is coming up online soon, where we can look at the very detailed kind of like fluid problem of some of, you know, braking process, looking at transport, for example, associated with wave braking. We do numerical simulation. This is DNS simulation where I was looking at penetration depths you know, associated with wave breaking processes. Then we go in the field to start looking at some of the larger scale, meter to kilometer scale, kind of like wave, you know, wave group kind of scales. And we use, this is an example of unmanned surface vehicles. We can look at larger scale. This is a front, you know, capture from an airborne instrument package that I'll briefly mention. This is a thermal image looking at temperature structure as a front. Of a front at the northern edge of the loop current, where there's a lot of structures. You see surface signature of Langmuir cell. You see a sharp change in temperature associated with these features, et cetera, et cetera. And ultimately, all this information feeds into better parametrization of air-sea interaction at larger scale. So some of the, you know, I'll go over some of the results, or a few results that I'm interested in, again, from a very high level standpoint. But, you know, and really like a primary goal for me is to improve the understanding of the physics of Earth's interaction processes, and obviously its influence on the coupling between the ocean and the atmosphere. So we spend a lot of time in the field. This is an example from an experiment where we were flying an instrumented research aircraft sampling aerosol down to 30 meters above the surface, close to flip. This was where the picture was taken, and I was at that time in the cockpit of the aircraft, not feeling my best, I guess, being so close to the ocean surface, but, you know, very excited about the data that we're collecting. What we do a lot, what we try to achieve, again, with this idea of tackling it from every angle, is to use this multi-platform, multi-sensors approach to our experiments. So we're going to use a combination of airborne assets. This is some example. We fly an aircraft, we have research platform, research vessel, unmanned surface vehicle, all operating together. So you have this 4D, 3D in time observation of a given process that we're focusing on. One of the things that we really spend a lot of time on is trying to develop better understanding of surface wave and wave breaking. And to do that, we've developed over the last 10 years or so in the group airborne instrumentation package. And in particular, there is one called the MASS, the Modular Aerial Sensing System. It is built around a scanning waveform LiDARs that gives you observation of surface wave and surface slope, and with very, very great accuracy. This is, just to give you an idea, this is an example of surface wave data. This is a 3D point cloud color-coded for height in the vicinity of a buoy for the height I'm sorry, in the vicinity of the buoy, just to give you an idea of the scale here. And to give you an idea, we're flying at 1,000 feet, and we have about 25 by 25 centimeter resolution with sub-centimeter accuracy in the vertical, or several centimeters accuracy in the vertical height. But to give you an idea of the accuracy, those outliers that you see here are not outliers; they're actually birds flying around the platform that we're showing here during a storm. And I think it's a nice testimony to the accuracy of the system. So we also use a bunch of electro-optical system, infrared camera, hyperspectral camera to look at ocean surface processes, wave kinematic, ocean color, biochemistry processes, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a very, very useful system. The way I use it primarily is, I fly in one direction and I can get swaths of surface waves or swaths of sea surface topography, I guess. This is an example here. It's about 350 meters wide by 6 kilometers long. This is color-coded for height, and you can clearly see the surface signature of the wave. If you do spectral analysis, you can start looking at the directional spectral properties of the waves, and there's a lot of things to say about that. It relates to some of the transport and mixing in the upper ocean, so we're focusing a lot on this. And if you fly for very, very long distance, this is an example here, you can start looking at those very broadband surface height, sea surface height anomaly, and this is very important for large-scale global studies, looking at mesoscale to sub-mesoscale to smaller scale processes. And this is an example of what we collect, for example, from a JSON altimeter, and what we gain, with the mass going to higher frequency and seeing the presence of waves as well, surface wave down to higher frequencies. What I'm observing is a multi-scales process. If you think about frontal processes, this is an example here. You often, through wave current interaction, have steepening of the waves that leads to wave breaking. So just to help the eye a little bit here, I have warm water on one side and cold water on the other side. This is similar to the front that I showed earlier. And you see this, there's a lot of processes through which you'll get wave steepening leading to wave breaking. And this is really important for some mesoscale and studies and better understanding air-sea interaction at those processes. So we're spending a lot of time looking at this and actually coming up with some very interesting result leading to better understanding of those processes. It also is important for wave breaking induced mass transport, which is often neglected. And this is something that we've been doing in the laboratory at the H Lab, trying to better understand how much momentum or horizontal transport of mass is associated by Stokes drift, which is well known, but also with wave breaking induced processes, and that's some of the work that we do here. All this stuff is really important. There's a lot of interest in the community in characterizing the contribution of some mesoscale to the vertical exchange of climate and biological variables. So we're involved in large programs such as SMO. This is a NASA-led project combining, again, this whole idea of having a lot of in situ observation combined with aircraft and airborne remote sensing kind of tools to better understand those kind of processes. But to do all this, obviously, to do the observational part, you need to develop new tools. And that's a huge component of our activities. This is kind of, what my children call the toys, that we're using, a combination of unmanned surface vehicle, unmanned aircraft, or uncrewed aircraft, sorry, and, piloted aircraft, autonomous ship, which is a new device that I'll talk about, ship, research platform, including some of the newer ones that are being developed through collaborators in Europe. The Polar Pod, which will be start the construction will occur this year. So any tool we can get our hands on to get more observation will just fall on. And this is some of the technologies that we use. We use a lot of wave gliders. They're specifically instrumented for SIO interaction. Wave gliders harness the energy of the wave as a mean of propulsion, and you can put a lot of instrumentation on it. They're great because they create a very little drag, and they create little interference with respect to the air and the water you're trying to characterize, especially when you do measurement of turbulence. These are platforms that are well suited to do RC interaction. So we've done a lot of work with this. This is example of kind of like frontal crossing, like going across a front in the Gulf of Mexico, showing various features with great detail down to very, very shallow water depths. It's harnessing the energy of the wave, and it's fairly slow. So now we're actually looking at, when we're looking at some mesoscale processes, we need to go fast. So we're developing an autonomous research vessel that can go up to 10 knots, which have shorter endurance, 7 to 10 days, but is well suited for the kind of spatial temporal evolution we expect with some mesoscale processes. So heavily instrumented, under development currently at the lab. We develop autonomous vehicle as well. It's a little loud here. That are equipped, that are designed to do automated takeoff and landing from ships, so we can do work in very remote locations, but are still very capable. With scanning LiDAR capability to look at ocean topography, visible imagery, and so forth. So that's some of the examples, some of the tools that we develop. And then we do a lot of interdisciplinary collaborative research program with PIs here at Scripps, with Falk and Sarah and other people, using those tools that we develop to do RC interaction studies, and characterizing the directional wave properties, or the directional properties of wind generated surface wave require very great accuracy. And in turns, once we develop all those tools, it applies very nicely to all the problems. So this is an example of looking at inner shell processes, estuary neutral processes with Falk and other people. This is an IR images looking at flow separation near headland during our project of Point Sao, various ecosystem benthic habitat type monitoring through STCP and other project. I'll point out two projects real quick before I conclude my talk. One which I think is really neat was with Adam Young a few years back during the 2015-2016 El Nino. We got a chance to conduct airborne LiDAR survey before the El Nino storm and after. So this is an example here of a before survey. This is Scripps, obviously. This is a 3D point cloud color-coded for RGB imagery or visible imagery. Think of it as a kind of like a Google map. So this was before, the El Nino storm on October 6th during a low tide. We did cover the entire coastline, and this is what happened a few months later when some of those El Nino storm hit, and there was significant erosion. This is an example here of a cross section close to Scripps occurring associated with those storm, which I think is really nice. And Adam summarize those results in this paper here. We're starting to focus on air-sea-ice interaction research, which I think is very exciting too. We have a project that we just finally got the funds in a few weeks ago. It's an ERC grant in collaboration with Peter Sidon and Yves Romer, and we're starting to look at various aspects of air-sea-ice interaction and some of the unique turbulence environment upper ocean turbulence environment that you were expecting in this area, using a combination again of airborne asset, in situ asset, orbital product, and actually modeling and theory as well. So this is kind of a new project that will start in the fall. And I think I'm running out of time, so I think I'll leave it at this. But again, this was a brief introduction of the kind of things that I'm interested in and that the lab is doing. So please reach out to me if you have any question. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Luc. So let's take a few minutes for questions now, and then we'll come back later. And Romy, can you help me, since I had to come in through my phone and I can't see the Q&A? Okay, no questions yet. So Luc, just a question from me. Can you give us a sense of sort of the priority or the relative importance of different factors in and contributing to the wave dynamics? So you talked a lot about fronts, and then you know, and of course there's just the relative amount of wind and so forth. But as you think about all of those factors, give us some sense of the relative priority.
Well, I think because it's a couple problem and it's a multi-scale kind of cascade of problem, I think to me, they're all priority. I think my primary focus in terms of what I'm doing now for air-sea interaction is looking at the role of wave breaking in all those processes, and the role of wave current interaction for some mesoscale processes, because these are very hot topic right now, and it's partly driven by the mesoscale community that is trying to look at some mesoscale processes and really need better understanding of what's going on at those places, because there's a lot of there's a lot of flux and going on, and a lot of energy being exchanged at those scales. Does that make sense?
Yeah. You also showed us just a tremendous range of tools and instruments for looking at wave interactions and aerosol generation and so forth. Everything from planes to new autonomous vehicles that can go 10 knots, which is a fun thing to contemplate. As you think about the problems that you want to attack in the future, you know, what are a couple of technologies that you wish you had that don't exist yet?
So there are, I mean, I have a long wish list of things, but being able to look at smaller scale wave into the capillary, like millimeters, centimeter wavelength would be very nice, because there is a lot of implication for orbital remote sensing and just basic fundamental understanding of the of wave generation, which I think is really exciting, and that goes back to Walter Munk and Coxton Munk kind of obsession with, for Walter up to the end of his life, of trying to understand why we have, the kind of directional distribution in the wave field that we have. That's the sun glider problem that he was obsessed with. And then in terms of remote sensing, better measurements of spatial measurement of surface current at high resolution. We're starting to make headways, a group, we're not completely there yet, but that opens up a lot of new technology, a lot of new science applications, sorry. So these are some of the things. It's the more, again, this idea of, we're looking at 4D piece of observation. So the higher resolution, the larger field of view data that you can get in this 40 cube of information, the better science you can achieve, I think. And so anything that goes in that direction really helps.
Great, thanks, Luc. So